I'm Yaakov Fruchter from Beth Tzedec congregation. Really glad to be here with all of you. BT All Access, and this is a specific program geared towards our 20s and 30s community. This special program, I'm so glad to one of our superstar leaders, Leah Maurer, to move things along.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our program tonight. I want to begin by acknowledging that we are all gathering remotely tonight. Many of us are in Toronto, but some of us, like myself, are not in town. I'm in Hamilton. I know Genevieve, you're in Ottawa. Obviously, Abby, you're joining us from New York. I'm going to be sharing a land acknowledgement for the land on which Beth Tzedec is situated. If you are not currently on the lands recognized in this treaty acknowledgement, I encourage you to investigate the Indigenous lands on which you are currently being hosted. So tonight, we are privileged to be brought together by Beth Tzedec Synagogue. In keeping with and out of respect for Indigenous protocols, I acknowledge that the synagogue is situated upon the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. I would like also to acknowledge these nations as the traditional caretakers of this land. As inhabitants of this territory, we are all responsible for knowing and honoring the treaties that apply to the territory. One of these treaties is the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. This agreement requires all inhabitants of the Great Lakes region to share and care for the many resources that we all rely on. The treaty was signed for this land. A treaty between the Mississaugas of the Credit and the British is referred to as the Toronto Purchase. It is also known as Treaty 13. These treaties apply to lands east of Browns Line to Woodbine Avenue and north toward Newmarket. I also acknowledge the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land. Since long before European settlement here, Toronto has been a gathering place, and First Peoples from across Turtle Island continue to gather here, to live here, and to care for the territory. Finally, I acknowledge with gratitude the opportunity to live here, to work here, and to be in relationship with this land, the First Peoples of this land, and the people of many nations who continue to gather here today. Today in particular, I would like to acknowledge the voices and experiences heard and silenced of the 2S LGBTQ+ peoples of this land. I also want to welcome everybody here tonight. We are starting a new initiative at Beth Tzedec called BYOB, Bring Your Own Book. It's a new social justice themed book club for Beth Tzedec for the people in our 20s and 30s. This intimate small group is going to meet every other month to read a book and have a conversation about a pressing social issue. We're going to read a mix of fiction and of nonfiction, and we're going to engage in an open, honest communication about the issues at hand in the books that we read. So tonight, obviously, we're going to be talking about Abby's book, Becoming Eve. Our next meeting is going to be on Wednesday, August 26th, and we're going to be focusing on local anti-Black racism. In preparation for this event, we're going to be reading Desmond Cole's new book, The Skin We're In. And during our book discussion, we're also going to listen to the lived experiences of Jews of color and discuss how we can address racism in our community. We're looking forward to an evening of listening, sharing, learning, and growing together tonight and also on August 26th. So if you're interested in joining us for that event, Yaakov, can you post the link to the Google form to register for that in the chat? And feel free to fill it out and let us know a little bit about you and any ideas you have for the group. And that's it for me. I'll shut up and pass it over to Genevieve, who's going to introduce Abby.
Hi there, my name is Genevieve Cohen. I am joining you from Ottawa. So Abby Stein is a Jewish educator, author, speaker, and activist. She was born and raised in a Hasidic family of rabbinic descent and is a direct descendant of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic Judaism. Abby attended yeshiva, completing a rabbinical degree in 2011. In 2012, she left the Hasidic world to explore a self-determined life. In 2015, she came out as a woman of trans experience. And since coming out, she's been working to raise support and awareness for trans rights and those leaving ultra-Orthodoxy. In 2016, Abby was named the Jewish Week by the Jewish Week as one of the 36 under 36 young Jews who are inspiring change in the world. And in 2019, she was named by the Forward as one of the Forward 50 most influential American Jews. In 2018, she was awarded the Pride Award by the Brooklyn Borough President. Her memoir, Becoming Eve, My Journey from Ultra-Orthodox Rabbi to Transgender Woman, was published by Seal Press in November 2019. We will now hear from Abby and then open up for a question and answer period afterwards.
Thank you, Leia and Genevieve. Is my video shaking for everyone, or is it just for me? Or does no one else care? Got it. Okay, we're good then. Let me know if anything happens. I don't know. I have a new computer and I'm still figuring everything out. Also, did you email people the videos that I sent you, or did people? I'm just curious. Genevieve?
I don't think they were distributed in the end.
That's fine. And I just wanted to know what people might read. Yeah. But I actually want to start with something else. I want to start by reading. I don't know how many have read the book. If you haven't, you need to log off right now and go back. You're all welcome to be here. Don't take me too serious. But this is in the epilogue. It's like as I am talking to my dad, kind of like coming out to him. And this is like at this point, I'm like, I've spent an hour trying to talk to him, trying to explain my life to him. And like, I see this like flash going off in his mind. Okay, maybe he got it. Silence. Fine, I thought. Tati doesn't believe that it's possible. He's going to say that being transgender isn't possible, that trans people don't exist, and he will brush us off. After all, I had heard far less religious people say such things. I couldn't expect Tati to be any different. This time, however, Tati surprised me. Okay, yes, he said. It is possible that there are people in the world whose souls and bodies are different, and it can be real. But you need a tzaddik, a righteous person who has a Holy Spirit within him to know that for sure. I've seen two therapists and a doctor who all agree with me, I told him. They're not tzaddikim, but they know it's true. But do you think that is okay with Judaism? He responded. Now, again, I assume some of you have read it. I hope more of you will read it, will read it more. But the reason why I wanted to start with this is because I want to make a confession. I have daddy issues to some extent. Not too much, though. But I feel so often when I do events with Jewish communities, with synagogues, with temples, with JCCs, with Hillels, and so many other places, that the strongest response that I could ever have to, do you think dad, he couldn't even say what that is, but referring to like being trans, okay with Judaism. And obviously I gave him my answer then, and we can go on to talk about it. I think last time I was actually at Beth Tzedec, we did a tech study. I'm not sure. Did we do a tech study? So obviously some of you who have done that know that there is other ways of answering that question as well. But to me, the strongest answer is something like this. The strongest answer is they are hundreds and thousands of Jews that I've personally interacted with who seem to be just okay with it. And not just okay with it. After I came out, I had my own bat mitzvah / coming out naming celebration, which has become to me a very big part of what we need to do, which is focusing on celebrating who we are, not just being okay with who we are. And there are so many Jewish communities where we get to do that. And in so many ways, that is the strongest answer. So I want to start with this because first and foremost, I'm really grateful to all of you for being here. Whatever you read it or not, I am grateful that you tuned in. I'm grateful to Genevieve and to Yaakov and to Beth Tzedec for making this happen. And let's have a conversation. So how many of you were at the tech study that I did at Beth Tzedec? Or at any tech study that I've ever done? So most of you were not. Okay, that's good actually. Because I have a question for you. And open the chat. We're not gonna, I mean, it's small enough maybe. No, let's start with the chat. Just open the chat and put in a number. A number of how many genders you think Judaism recognizes. And by Judaism, I mean traditional Judaism. I'm gonna let you define what traditional Judaism is, but we're talking about traditional Judaism. And don't give me any explanations, just a number. Okay, I love Genevieve is like 7, 5, 5, 3, 3, 2, 6. Okay. Well, you're pretty much all wrong. I love saying that. Sorry, I can't help it. Besides the, one person just said 6 and Genevieve 7 and Yankov 7, that could be accurate depending on how you interpret it. But there's at least 6. In all likelihood, it's 8 because 2 of these categories, there is 2 different versions of them. One of them is nature and one of them is people, whatever. I'm not gonna go into all the details. I recently read an article by a friend of mine, a rabbi, who she argues that there's 10 in the Talmud. It all depends on how you interpret it. Now, personally, I'm a big fan of what I had a gender studies professor used to say that there are 7.5 billion people, 7.5 billion gender identities, and 7.5 billion sexualities. And I agree with that. I sometimes, I've done it at events in person where you call up people and you start asking them their ideas of gender. Define to me what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl, what it means to be non-binary. What ultimately ends up happening is that you don't have 2 people who have the same idea of what it means to be anything, which I think is perfect. Because as most of you probably know, and if you don't, you should know it now, gender, specifically the way we think about gender, as in the way you are perceived, the kind of clothing you wear, the kind of people you tend to hang out with, your role in society and so much, it's a social construct. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I am a woman, I am feminine, I wear makeup every day and I'm very proud of it and it's empowering and I love it. But as long as we are aware that it's made up, we're good. But it's at the end of the day, it's made up by the simple fact that we all have different ideas of what that is. Now, for me, while Judaism in the Talmud, and you would think that more religious people should have more genders. No, I think people who like to take the Talmud, take everything to the next level, they should have even more. But that's not, unfortunately, how many religious communities live. And so I grew up in the Hasidic community, and I did not know that there are other transgender people. I didn't even know the word transgender or other people who feel like me until I got online for the first time when I was 20, sorry. I want to read one other part of the book, and then I will talk for a few more minutes, and then I will take some questions. We have until 8:30, just so I know. Until when do we have? 9:30, 10, 11, 12, like what's the?
I think we're aiming for a by 9 wrap up. So 8:30, 8:40 if we're pushing, if we've got some really amazing questions happening.
Or I can just talk for 5 hours, okay. So I want to read, and you said I shouldn't show videos. You decided no on videos, Genevieve? You don't care? Actually, then I want to show a video. Let's see if I can share the screen. I can't. I'm not a host.
Yaakov will do that, I believe.
Could you make me? I wanted to read a prayer that I wrote when I was 9 years old, but I like that video. That
I think you can do the video. You should be able to do it now.
Yes. Okay. Don't look at my Facebook, which is going to be on the screen. No, but whatever. Just a second. For my WhatsApp. Okay. Here. I want this on. This is what I look on Wikipedia. Google. Okay, nothing to be ashamed of. Oh, hold on just a second.
Holy Creator, I'm going to sleep now and I look like a boy. I am begging you. When I wake up in the morning, I want to be a girl. Hi, my name is Abby Stein. I am 28 years old. I currently live in New York City, and I'm the author of Becoming Eve, my journey from ultra-Orthodox rabbi to transgender woman that just came out last week. I grew up in Brooklyn, growing up in Williamsburg in Brooklyn, New York, but I spent a lot of time growing up in Rockland, and then when I was married, so from 2010 to 2013, I lived here in Rockland. So growing up, we would come, like my parents would come on the all major holidays, and like during the year, we would come to visit our kind of, who was the Rebbe, who was the Vishnitz Rebbe who lived in Muncie. He is the one who founded what's called the village of Keser. This place is a very special place in my heart. Rockland specifically, and LGBTQ people in Rockland, and all of you. I identified as a woman since a really young age, and I felt different than all the other boys that I was forced to go to school with. And I remember thinking, like, I know I'm a girl, period. I never doubt that, I never questioned that. Yet everyone around me, my teachers, my parents, tell me that I'm a boy. Now, if these people could be wrong about something so existential about who I am, something so existential about the world, what makes me think that they're not wrong about God and about religion and about Judaism? So that is kind of what caused me to ask more questions as well. So I think one of the stories that are very impactful for me in the book was my way of trying to deal with it. I think the part where I see this book as being a universal story of humanity is you see a young girl trying to grapple and deal with my identity, and I had different ways of doing that. I was always told that God can help with anything. Well, maybe it was time to turn to God. After all, I figured, since I was apparently the only girl in the world who was told I was a boy, only Der Bashefer, the Creator, could help me. I wrote a prayer. Holy Creator, I'm going to sleep now and I look like a boy. I am begging you. When I wake up in the morning, I want to be a girl. I know that you can do anything and nothing is too hard for you. So please, I am a girl. Why can't I look like a beautiful little girl? If you do that, I promise that I will be a good girl. I will dress in the most modest clothes. I will listen to everything Mommy and Tati ask. And I will keep all the commandments girls have to keep in the best way possible. When I get older, I will be the best wife. I will help my husband study Torah all day and all night. I will cook the best foods for him and my kids. I will have the nicest Shabbos table. And I will have as many babies as I can. God, you have enough boys. You do not need me to be a boy. I promise. If I wake up as a girl, I will make up for it by having many boys who will be the most studied and pious boys. I want to give birth to girls when I'm older, but if you listen to me now, I'm ready to make an exchange. Let me be a girl, and I will be happy to have a big family with just boys. Oh God, help me.
Was it clear enough? Oh, sorry. The next video just continued to play. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Oh, you didn't hear anything? Oh, because I stopped sharing. Okay, it was just on my computer. It's fine. Okay. Now, one of the things why I wanted to share that is not just the actual prayer. It's not just the actual experience as a 9-year-old child. It's also a lot about, like, I read it and part of me wants to cry, but then another part of me wants to cringe. Like on these ideas of like what it meant to be a girl that I grew up with. And these are ideas that when you grow up in the community I grew up in, whatever you are raised as a boy or as a girl, these are the messages that you get. I remember having a conversation with one of my married sisters a while ago. I have 8 sisters, 7 of them are married by now. And I remember it was like as I was leaving the community, and I remember teasing one of them and saying, "Oh, you're just like a baby factory." And it was supposed to be like teasing her, but then she is like, "Yes, that's what God created us for," which only makes it more sad. It's like the messages, and this is the part where I think, and I'm hoping that for people reading this book, taking away more than just the exotic parts. Like, I get that my before and after picture are relatively more exotic than many other people. And you get like the Hasidic, like Streimel and White Sox and whatever compared to where I am now. But I don't want that to just be the story. Because in so many ways, the way I see it, I have been privileged over the past few years to have an audience, to have whatever it was in the media, or I have given somewhere around 500 speeches by now over the past few years. And I don't think it's to any credit of my own. I don't think people come to listen to me because I'm like the most interesting trans person. I very obviously am not. I can give you a list of people who are, if you really want to know that. But there is this opportunity here. There is this part where people are drawn to a certain story. And if I may read another part again, I mean, this is a book club event, right? I'm allowed to read a lot, right? Is that okay? There's towards the end of the introduction, which to me, it's important to me to get it, because I don't know how many of you know anything. Like I feel like I shouldn't just come here and just tell my story. You can learn that online. That's like, we're here to talk about the book, but obviously you can ask me any questions and we'll get to that in a minute. But this is about specifically why I wanted to share, and then I want to share another part from another book that I wrote a forward to about the power of stories, and then I have a request for all of you about stories, and then we can do questions. So this is like the last page of the introduction, kind of like explaining like why I wrote this book specifically. My story includes 2 interwoven transitions. Coming out of ultra-Orthodoxy and coming out as a trans woman. The stories we read of both experiences tend to suffer from problems in the public sphere. Problems that are marked by overt polarization, lack of nuance, and the romanticizing of a mysterious religious sect. Several books have been written about the Hasidic community, both by people who have lived it and left, and by outsiders looking in. And most either glorify it or demonize it. Trans representation tends to follow a similar path. There is overt sexualization and the casting of transness as mental illness, or idealized representations that focus on victimhood. So thankfully, that's starting to change. I'm unaware of another memoir that combines both experiences. My hope is to share all of this with you. The beautiful parts of my childhood, the feelings of safety, belonging, and love that growing up in a religious, even cultish community can offer, hand in hand with the trauma of discomfort with my body and gender in a gender-segregated society. It was a childhood that helped me figure out who I am. My story is my own, but it is also something greater. It is a story about arranged marriages in New York City, about a family of 13 siblings and more than 30 aunts and uncles, of a family tree with branches as twisted as medieval European royalty. It is a portrait of life in a gender-segregated society, nestled within one of the world's most progressive metropolises. It is also a simple story of a girl coming of age. I hope in these pages you will find a portrait of life that every human being can relate to. The vulnerability and the glory, the frustrations and revelations, the shedding of one identity and growing into another. No agenda, just my story. That's kind of a lie, though, because if you want to talk about a queer, gay agenda, and if that is just that people should like love us and celebrate us and stop killing us, then I do have an agenda. But outside of that, this is just telling a story. Now, why am I saying this? And I don't want this to become just me reading. So I'm going to forego reading the other part. I will just mention a book. So there's a book that was just published called Trans New York. It's a collection of 51 portraits of trans people living in the New York area. I wrote a foreword to that book. And one of the things that I made even more clear that I got to express in that foreword, and something that is so powerful, is the power of sharing our stories. Studies have shown that it's probably the single most empowering and important kind of act that we can do to create more acceptance. And I'm not going to say tolerance. Some of you might have heard me say that before, but tolerance is meant for lactose, not for people we celebrate. So if the single most important tool that we have to create, that's something that we can all do, is sharing personal stories. It's easier to hate an idea. It's not so easy to hate a person. Obviously, it's possible. Just check out my social media. People could hate people. But there's something so powerful with sharing these stories. It's a question that I keep getting asked every Pride Month and during the year, during events. And I don't know all of you, but I know there's at least some of you are also part of the LGBTQ community. I don't know how many of you, but for everyone. And people want to know, like, what can we do? So obviously, I mean, we can use a lot of money for different amazing nonprofit organizations. We could do, if you work in public policy or in politics, there's a lot that you can do. If you work for a corporation, it would be really nice if they also cared about us the other 11 months of the year. There's a lot that can be done. But one thing that all of us can do that doesn't cost anything, that is a simple act, is sharing these stories. I have been talking a lot about it right now also over the past few weeks as we have had the revolution that is so outdated, that is so, not outdated, that is so overdue. Where like people speaking up about racism, racial justice, and so on. And it's the same thing with that. Sharing personal stories and personal experiences is something that we can all do, whatever it is, sharing something on Facebook, on social media, in person. That one small act that might be like, who is really gonna care? Like I have like, 100 followers on Facebook and like, I'm gonna share a story, who really is gonna care? You can never know the power of it. Because just like microaggressions, do I have to explain that? Do we all know what that is? Should I explain it? We good? Great. So just like like these subtle things, these like walking down, like one of the things I was just talking, did an interview with this magazine from Paris earlier today, and they were talking about like the experience of being a woman. And I'm like, one of the things that's for me that was so shocking is even though I knew about it, and I was like a proclaimed feminist since I was 12 and got into a lot of trouble, but I knew that like street harassment and catcalling is a real thing. But until I started experiencing, I never realized like all these like subtle, which like most people and quite frankly, most guys and most girls that I talk to are like, okay, that guy just made a comment about your ass. He was sitting, he wasn't like whatever. It's not, all these small things add up. So we all know microaggressions are a big deal. But to quote the Talmud, it's midat tova meruba midat proniyot. A good deed goes a lot farther. A micro activist, I don't know how to say that, but a small deed of like sharing a story, of speaking up, like sitting at is Thanksgiving also such a big deal in Canada, or is that only in the US? Like Thanksgiving dinner, is that, I was gonna say Thanksgiving dinner because that's usually the example that I use, or the Seder, whatever it is. Like when you sit with a bigger family and you make a comment, and there's someone, you know, we always love to talk about that creepy aunt or creepy uncle, you know, like whatever, we all have one of these. Well, I have a lot of them, but you know what I mean. And everyone is like, why would I say anything? Like, it's not like, yeah, they made a homophobic statement. Is something going to really change? Or the same with racism or ableism or a lot of other things. But it is very powerful. And there's this, there's the part of simply putting that out there, because that is the strongest tool that we have to change, which is such a big reason why I wrote a book, such a big reason why I got involved with Trans New York as a book and helped cast and get the people that were in there in several other projects that I've been involved with. But it also goes beyond that. These tiny actions, there could always be someone in the background watching, listening, and you can never know who you can help. I don't know if I told the story when I was at Beth Tzedec last time. It's possible I did, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But when I was, so this was like the end of the summer of 2015. So I left the community in 2012. So all of that you could read in the book up to the point of me leaving. The actual leaving is no longer in the book. That's going to be in book number 2, which is going to be a documentary at first. I already said too much. Or a movie first. They're still fighting, but we'll figure it out. So, and then there was a 3-year kind of like period after I left, before I came out. So this was towards the summer of 2015. It was like I was starting my second year in college. And I was like at this point where I wanted to start coming out to people, but I felt like I wasn't ready to come out to everyone. So I was talking with this mentor that I had in college who was also queer. And I asked her, like, how do I know which students I can trust? Like I was at this point where I'm like, I was already building up, like I already had a lot of LGBTQ friends. I was going to support groups, but I wanted someone who's not necessarily like, I wanted to start feeling how it is to come out to someone who's not part of the LGBTQ community, but how do I know who I can trust? So this was a few months after in the spring of 2015 was the Supreme Court, actually June 2015, which was the Supreme Court ruling that legalized gay marriage in the US. A few hundred years too late, but and it was a lot of people had like a rainbow filter on their Facebook profile. It was very like popular. It was like what all the millennials did. And she told me, go back. If you think someone might be, you want to know, and see if they use the rainbow filter. That could be like an initial kind of like feeling it out. Is that someone you might want to talk about? Now, I doubt that anyone was like, okay, I'm going to put the rainbow filter right now, specifically back. I feel like now it's a bit more common, like social media activism is a bit more in style. But like how many people actually thought, oh, I'm going to put the rainbow filter on my profile picture because maybe I have a friend who's going to want to come out and I want them to know that I'm an ally. Yet that's exactly what I ended up doing. And I'm not saying everyone is like that. Not everyone does the same way, but you could never, these small actions, in addition to building up, in addition to changing so many minds of other people, it's also sends up I don't know, the bat signal. Sorry, I've been like watching a lot of DC comics, forgive me. But like it's sending out that signal of saying, hey, I'm listening. I'm someone that you can talk to. And that is something that I am asking, if I am allowed to have an ask for this Pride Month, to try to do that more, but also not just in June, also in August and in October. And you know what I mean. I think I should probably we should take some questions. I have a lot more that I can do. I have other parts of the book that I can read. I have more videos to show. I have a lot more that I can talk at you, but I want to talk with you. So I would love to get some questions. I think it's a small enough audience. Should we just have people unmute themselves if they want to ask questions? What do you think? Okay.
I think that's appropriate, yeah.
I do want to do something though first. Are any of you do any of you identify comfortably as straight and cisgender? Great, Lori. Sorry. Yeah, Lori, can I have a conversation with you? I want to have a conversation with you about questions.
Okay.
Are you okay? Can I put you on the spot? Is that okay?
You're going to ask me a question?
Yes, I have some questions for you. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just consent is very important. Okay, so hi, Lori. I'm Abby. What's your name? Sorry, it's Lori. Okay. Hi. So what's your sexuality?
Ooh, that's a very personal question.
I ask you.
I identify as straight.
Interesting. kind of cool. Wow. Are you sure about that?
I'm sure.
Maybe you just haven't met the right girl yet. I think I just have to set you up with like my friend and like Shiva. Like, you just need to meet the right girl.
You never know.
I'm not, also, like, how old were you when you realized you were straight?
I think because it's so normalized, I don't think I ever realized.
And your parents were okay when you came out to them as straight?
I never came out to my parents as straight.
Oh, do you think they will accept you?
So far, they've been accepting.
How nice of them. So, like, one other question, like, how does the whole like thing work?
Sorry?
Like how does it work?
How does it work?
Like, how does straight sex? Like, I just don't get. Okay, you don't have to answer that one.
There you go.
This is a lot better done in person, but it works on Zoom as well. And I think the message that I'm trying to make, which is very important, and I have that every time. And personally, I want to say, when I open up to questions, always, it's what I do. I always tell people, you can ask me anything. I don't have to answer everything, but you can ask me anything. However, I never want people to take that as I'm going to go now around and ask all trans people these questions. So usually, I think there's two main rules to keep in mind. And it's not just for trans and LGBTQ people, it's the same for when it comes to people of any minority, whether it's racial, economic, or any other background. Is first of all, if you don't know if you can ask something you're not sure, you probably can, so don't. But more importantly, think if you would ask that question from someone who is not part of that group. I'm not sure, I didn't ask these questions because I want everyone to go around now and be like, are you sure about your sexuality? No, never ask anyone ever that question. But it's a simple thing. Like, you want to ask something from a trans person, first of all, have you Googled it? That should be the first thing. If you can Google it, you shouldn't ask it anyone. But also, and you could find everything on Google, but also think if you would ask that from someone who isn't trans. What I have between my legs is none of your business unless if you're my doctor or I plan on dating you. And thankfully I'm in a relationship right now, so none of you have a chance. So anyway, but however, for tonight and for part of what I am volunteering myself to do is you can actually ask me anything. Nothing is off limits. I have a few things that I don't like to talk about, but I don't mind being asked questions about that. Because if someone asks about that, I see that as an opportunity, an educational opportunity to explain why I don't want to talk about that. So nothing is off limits. Ask away. Oh, Lori. Okay, well, you were allowed to ask the first question. I tortured you. It's fair game.
3 questions. I don't know if they're so in the book, it seemed that sort of as you were reckoning more and more deeply with your identity, that you sort of delved deeper and deeper into the sort of texts and learnings of Judaism,
yes.
which in those texts and learnings was exactly the sort of laws and teachings that you felt sort of rejected by. And as an outsider, I think I could very easily understand how if someone didn't feel that their identity was represented in their religion, to sort of spurn that religion, that you sort of seem to take an opposite approach. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that and sort of what your relationship with Judaism is today.
Well, originally, I did take the approach that you were thinking of. Like in the book, it becomes very clear. It was just back and forward. But ultimately, when I left, it wasn't because I was trans. I left because I did not believe. I mean, I still don't believe in most Orthodox things. I think I'm very Hasidic, very not Orthodox, but might still be Hasidic, which is a whole other conversation. I think there's a lot of Hasidic Judaism as a whole started out as almost an antithesis of Orthodoxy, which is maybe I'll put a link in a minute I have many source sheets on Sefaria. Sefaria, which is this online database of Jewish texts. I have a lot about gender in Judaism. I have about queer characters in the Bible, which I think everyone in the Bible is queer, but there's some characters that are like more queer than others. But one of the things that you will, I have a few source sheets also looking on early Hasidic texts, like, and to give you an example, there's a Hasidic text written by the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. So while Hasidic families today are quite big, the Baal Shem Tov himself only had 2 kids. So he didn't have many grandkids, and all of his grandkids became their own rebbes, and one of his great-grandkids was Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, who was very controversial at the time, but is probably one of the most well-known Hasidic rebbes of any time. But he had a daughter, the Baal Shem Tov, and she had 2 sons. She is also very interesting. She is kind of a feminist icon, or at least she should be. She, according to some stories, she was wearing tzitzis and put on tefillin and did a lot of other things. But we're not gonna go into that right now. But there's a text that he writes, and I'm saying why this is so important, because this is someone who literally grew up in the Baal Shem Tov, lived in the same house, and his teachings are probably the closest. The Baal Shem Tov himself never wrote a book, so the closest book probably you can find directly to his teachings are one of these. It's called Degel Machne Ephraim. There's one text, and I'll put a link to, it's in a Safari source sheet, where in pretty much word, actually, I forgot that I can share my screen. Let me actually show it. Can everyone see my screen? Just see if I can find it quickly. Here. Here, this one. Can you all see it? Oh, I need to. Okay. In every generation, the scholars of that generation are making up or filling up, I think I've translated, the Torah. Because the Torah is being interpreted in every generation according to the needs of that generation and according to the source of their souls. I didn't translate that part, but in Hebrew he's saying here also, right here. In other words, he's saying someone who doesn't believe in that, someone who doesn't believe that the Torah, that Judaism, the Jewish law is changing at every generation according to the needs of that generation, is a heretic. It's as if you don't believe in the Torah altogether. So he is saying that this is not just like a side detail. It is the base almost of everything. Now, if you walk into a Hasidic synagogue today and you're like, hey, you all should know that in every generation there's a new kind of Judaism and Judaism changes according to our needs, you would be called a heretic. So much of what Orthodox Judaism became about is like stopping in time and like freezing everything. And there are people for whom that works, and I'm not here to say that there's something inherently wrong with that. But Hasidic Judaism originally was very different from that. Okay, I'm totally like going off track. So like when I left, I very much left because I did not believe in that lifestyle. I did not believe in, and to this day, when people ask me if I believe in God, if they're talking about the God that Hasidic people or many Christians or many other people believe in, which is the God that I call the boogeyman in the sky, this God who's going to get really angry if you flip a light switch on Shabbat, I'm an atheist, and I still am. I still don't believe in that God. So to me, that was, I think, the reason for me questioning. Strive to question everything, and I described that in the book as well, like getting kicked out, or like the first time I got kicked out of class was for asking certain questions. That part triggered, so that obviously was triggered by my own identity. But ultimately, when I left, and that, like, I never came back to that. And I think after I left, I had something that one of my teachers today calls post-God traumatic disorder, which was when you leave and like God was that boogeyman and and I was so angry, and I was very angry with everything. If I have to use a metaphor, I imagine a circle of observance and practices where I started out at point 1, made a 180-degree turn, then got so angry and destroyed the circle. What happened though was, after a while, I looked back to the circle, picked up some pieces and created my own circle. To me, it was very much that after leaving and after making that clean break, I was able to look back and starting to find, I would say my Judaism today is in some ways very humanistic, but also very spiritual and very traditional in some ways, and also very non-traditional, very non and anti-traditional even in other ways. It all depends on how you look at it. But I see Judaism as a culture, a tradition, and a spiritual practice that has so much richness. Stuff like the idea of Shabbat, the Jewish life cycle and year cycle events, Jewish texts, songs, music, and frankly, the food. If any of you follow me on Instagram, you will see that. I love Ashkenazi Jewish food with a passion, and I am not ashamed. There are so many parts that are beautiful, and there are parts that aren't, and we can let go of that. And I think what was so helpful to me, what helped me kind of like, or as you would say, not do that, like rejecting everything. So actually, Genevieve, she's saying I was, sorry, do you use she, her pronouns? I don't want to, yeah. So she's saying I was literally Googling Kugel. So that was specifically because when I was doing the Wikipedia, when I was doing the interview with this woman from Paris, she wasn't Jewish. So I brought up Kugel. So I sent her the Wikipedia page for Kugel, which is why I had it on. I know what Kugel is. I don't have to Google it. I make that very often, all different kinds of Kugels. But yeah. So I want to use an example, like the way, and I would say ultimately, if I need to put in a one-liner, I don't observe anything. I'm not observant. I celebrate. I don't observe Shabbat. I celebrate Shabbat. I don't observe anything. And it's not just a cheesy statement. It's also the way I look at it. For me, when I do Shabbat on Friday night, I don't think there's a boogeyman in the sky who people call God who's going to get really angry. This is something that my people have been doing for thousands of years that is extremely powerful. And yes, when you start going into something deeper, you can also look at it in the sense of it is something that brings us all together. It is something that unifies us. And then you start getting into the fact that the Hebrew word for God kind of means being and existence, some total of existence. And we can start talking about God all over again if this is where we're going. Did I answer your question? Does that make sense? Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I need to, I have a cousin who's coming. Just a second. Someone is coming to stay with me tonight, and I need to send her my address.
So I think the way that we're doing this is if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask it. And if we end up having more than one person all jumping in at one time, then we can be kind to each other. And
I have a question.
Out in the ring.
I was at the Limud conference.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi everyone. I don't have a label there. I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Thank you so much for being here. This is really terrific. I was at a Limud conference a few years ago, and somebody mentioned like the marked experience they'd seen in their community, which was like a modern Orthodox one of like being gay in that community 15 or 20 years ago versus today, where it wasn't that they had reached acceptance, but that attitudes had shifted, and that there was like a marked difference. And I guess basically my question is, do you see winds of change in even the most closed in Orthodox spaces like the one that you left?
I wish I could say so. Unfortunately, no. I think they are parts of the community that are opening up. But the mainstream is becoming kind of more radical by the second. I think one of the things I used to joke when I started my work, that I want them to become transphobic, which sounds ridiculous, but for a community that never even spoke about transgender people, that's an accomplishment. And it's mission accomplished 4 years later. Like, they officially hate me, and like there's awareness about something that didn't exist before. But I'm in touch with several people who want to stay religious but want to transition, and I don't know what to tell them. I don't know of a way to do that in the Hasidic community. In other more modern Orthodox communities, that is changing, depending where and depending in which communities. And even there, it's like, it feels like you take 2 steps, you take like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That I would say. It's like it's moving, but extremely slowly, and there's constant pushback. But in the Hasidic community, I wish I could say that in 20 years, everything is going to be amazing, but I don't think so, unfortunately.
Thanks.
I know you kind of started with this, but I kind of want to circle back to, what do you think about the effect of sort of defining, I guess, a gender identity or in a very gendered society like the Hasidic community versus the secular society, which is still obviously quite gendered as well, but obviously in a different and perhaps more flexible way?
So, sorry, what's the question again?
Like, what do you find about, I guess, like, exploring personally, like that sort of navigating, like, I guess, defining like gender identity and all of that in the sort of 2 different societies? Because I know, obviously, in the Hasidic rules are very circumscribed, and obviously in secular society, there's still rules and there's obviously still expectations, but it seems more fluid. If I don't know if I
want to show another video, actually, to answer that question, if that's okay. I'm going to open a PowerPoint presentation. Give me a second. I want to show this video. Do any of you want to tell me what you saw in this video in terms of gender and sexuality? So, and I know we're running out of time, so I'm gonna just briefly say that one thing that like the few things that scream out, first of all, the gender roles. Obviously, there's man and woman separately, man at center of attention, which is something that is true in the Hasidic community as a whole. Women are never seen in leadership in the community as a whole. But also in terms of like sexuality and like where people fall in, it's like the woman, in this case, the bride, is not allowed to dance at her own wedding. Like she is barely moving while she's dancing with her own grandfather at her own wedding, while they are thousands of totally strange men dancing there. And that is because it's not okay for men to watch women dance, but it's totally fine for women to watch men dance. And it ultimately boils down to men being men having a lot of sexual agency who get turned on by seeing a woman's elbow versus women who are sexual objects who have no sexual agency. Now that is true in the Hasidic community. Okay, so that is true about gender. However, they actually don't live in a bubble. When it comes to gender, that's where I would say they don't live in a bubble, as much as they might want to say they do. Because that is the part where, sorry, if there's someone, oh yeah, that is the part where it's the same in society as a whole. This is just a more radical version. Like when you think about like, it's the woman's responsibility not to show off and not to dance in front of men. Okay, I work in public policy, and I think every woman politician I've ever worked with has at some point been asked the question how they balance their work and their family. I don't know many male politicians or CEOs that are being asked the same question. I can go on. In many states in the US and in many places around the world, forget about sexual assault. Even outside, I might have to get her before 9 though, Genevieve. I'm just like saying, yeah, I think 8:45 would be my cutoff. I'm just saying. I was originally scheduled 7:30 to 8:30. Sorry if were you told something else? Oh, okay. So I didn't like mess that up. Okay. In many places, it's totally like a defense lawyer could ask a woman who was assaulted, and I'm not talking about sexual assault, even if it wasn't sexual, what she was wearing is fair game. And I guess technically, I think they can ask the same thing from a man, but it never happens. So these kind of gender roles and ideas, maybe in the Hasidic community, it's a lot more solid. You have a lot less flexibility, and there's no like movement to change that. There's no feminist movement. None of that exists. But in many ways, they are merely a radical version of society as a whole. Does that answer your question? Great.
Hi, Abby. I have a question.
Hi, Zoe.
I loved your book, so thank you very much for writing it and for being here. So we know you have a relationship with 2 of your siblings, and I'm just wondering what that relationship looks like. Do you hang out? Do you just talk on the phone or like by email? Do they like tell you what's going on in the community, who's marrying who, like things like that?
So it's a bit different between one. So one of them, who is a brother who I'm really close with, and that's very public. He's the only one of my siblings that's on social media. He has a Facebook account, he's on Instagram. He does his own thing. He is still very religious, but culturally a lot more open. So with him, I'm really close, hang out a lot, close with him, his wife, his kids. He has met a lot of my friends. I've met some. Like we talk, we chat a lot. We have a lot of very different opinions about a lot of things. But and to him, I would say it's more like I don't know how like woke, if I can use that word, he is when it comes to LGBTQ stuff. To him, it's more like you're happy, great, I'm happy. We're moving on. It's not a kind of. He's not trying to change me. He's not judging anything. The other one, which I can't say much about because they would get into trouble with my family, it's mostly just over the phone. Once a month, it would be a lot, if I would say. They feel like a bit like they're doing me a favor, which maybe in the beginning it was. By now, it's starting to get a bit annoying. If it was a stranger who acted that way and like said, they are definitely still trying to bring me back and to convince me that I'm wrong and like that kind of thing. And just because, you know, it's family, so I agree to continue talking with them as long as it's possible. But it's not the most amazing.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead. I was thinking of asking a question. I don't know. How do you feel?
Go for it, Genevieve. You were in charge.
Ooh, awesome.
But by the way, where's your baby? She's so cute.
Or
he, sorry. She,
well,
right?
yeah. She, she, her pronouns, as far as we know.
For now.
That's what we're doing for now, right?
Yeah.
I think. So she's watching on Facebook Live, so I think she'll be.
Oh.
Yeah. So my question, well, first, it's kind of a relating piece because I'm a new mom, and in your book, you briefly described these feelings during the birth of your son, like it was supposed to be you in that room giving birth. And that really resonated with me as the non-gestational partner, because I grew up this entire time thinking, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to be the one, going to be pregnant, going to give birth. It's going to be great. And I do plan on still doing that in the future. But there was a part of me that when I was in that room, just going, it's supposed to be me. I'm supposed to be there. And just that idea of like what being a parent and being a mother, what that could mean. I just wonder if you could talk a bit about how your identity as a parent may have shifted through these major life transitions.
Yeah, that is intense. I also don't like talking about my son in public. Like his life is private, so I can't say much about, because I do believe that ultimately a parent, in many ways, it's all in relation. Oh, hello, hi there. I feel like it's all in relationship to our kids. So that it definitely has evolved. That much I will say. It has definitely evolved since my son was born in many ways. It's something that I definitely talk a lot about. I know you're not supposed to, but I think like lesbians don't have rules. So like my girlfriend and I definitely discussed that very early on. Kids in general. I think a lot about it. I mean, I'm generally conflicted about if I want to have more biological kids or if I want to adopt kids, but the whole thing is very interesting to me. And I'm gonna be honest, like I've been reading a lot about like inducing lactation, for example, for trans women, which is something that is, you do that. We'll have to talk, I think in a few years, maybe. I know it has been done before and it's possible and it's, a lot of it revolves around that. Ultimately, I think that as much as I think biology plays a role in family, being a parent is way more than that. And at times has nothing to do with that. So that obviously comes into play a lot. But I think at the end of the day, there are certain emotions that are always going to be there. I don't think we can just unplug them. And I think there's no such a thing as a wrong emotion. There are things that we need to lean in and maybe work with and try to work around them or with them. Yeah. Yes, so we had Leah, yes. Is it Leah or Leah? Leah, okay.
Thank you also for being here. I was just wondering how, like, so much of your book talks about things in the Hasidic community that, like, I as a Jew am like uncomfortable with. And I'm just
like what?
I mean, like the strict gender roles to start with, and like just, you know, I'm not a Hasidic Jew. I'm shocking. I'm, you know, can belong to a conservative synagogue, but whatever, like that's not necessarily how I define myself. But
listen, my thing about labels always is that labels belong in clothes, you know, and clothes you have to put in a closet. Never put humans in closets. Therefore, humans don't need labels anyway.
Awesome. So, like, I'm just wondering how your book has been received by non-Jews who are reading about some of these rituals and some of the customs and roles that exist in Hasidic community.
I think I tried to make it very clear, and I hope it comes across that this is not about Judaism. This is about this specific community. And that part is accurate. I haven't had, if you're asking, did I see people make anti-Semitic statements because of it? No, not even remotely. I haven't. I think it's very clear, and specifically in the Apalach, it also becomes very clear that I'm still very Jewishly involved. If something, it has become, it has made people have compared it more to like Mormons and to Amish as a whole than to other Jews. Yeah, so there's definitely, and I think the Hasidic community is a culture before a religion, before they're Jewish, or a culture before anything. And I think that part is important, and I try to make sure that that comes across. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hannah, I think Hannah, yes.
I did have a question about your son, but you mentioned that you don't like to talk about him, so I'm going to ask a different question instead. How is your sexual identity played into figuring out your gender identity?
I think I can answer that question when I figured out my sexual identity. As I assume most of you know, they're two separate things. I think they can influence it. They can not even influence as much as the word I'm looking for. They can, damn it, what's the word I'm looking for? They can not educate each other. They can, they impact maybe the way we ourselves. So I think the way we see ourselves in terms of gender could have an impact on how we see ourselves in terms of sexuality. But I sometimes used to joke that I wished my sexuality was as clear to me as my gender. It took me a long time to figure it out. And ultimately, the only thing that I figured out is that I don't need to figure it out. And if I like someone, I date them. If I don't, I don't. Moving on. I don't have to care about which labels are placed on it. And I definitely think that part, I was only able to get to a place like this after coming out. So I needed to be comfortable with myself, with my gender identity, in order to be able to explore that, in order to be able to experience that in that way. I say a lot that in order for people to really understand the difference between gender and sexuality, is like imagine getting into bed with someone. Okay, so gender is who do you want to be, sexuality is who do you want to be with, who do you want the other person to be. But I think sometimes if you don't know who you want to be, it's hard to know who the other person is. But I was definitely I was always, as I described in the book in length, I did stuff with boys throughout my life, and with girls throughout my life. So obviously that was there always. But I definitely think being able to come to this place of I don't have to have a sexuality that has one specific label. I mean, I could label myself if I really want to. It would be pan kind of bisexual sexually, but more lesbian leaning romantically, and also demisexual, if you really want a host of labels. But I think I am very comfortable. So the very short answer to your question, it definitely had an impact on it. And I think in a good way. And specifically my ability to be very comfortable with not being comfortable. Yeah. Thank you.
So I think that might be our time for tonight in terms of questions with you. Kind of wrapping up tonight, I wanted to just say a huge thank you, and I'm sure, Leah, you can mention something as well when you're mentioning reminder book club details. Thank you so much for joining us again. You joined us, I think it was 2 years ago, and it was such a wonderful thing having you for a social justice Shabbat dinner. And this is definitely a different kind of atmosphere, but I'm really grateful for this kind of intimate discussion that we've had with you. I was originally hoping that perhaps my daughter would be able to help with this little draw, and it would be really cute, but children are a wild card. And so I've actually we've got a draw for one of our attendees here on Zoom to get a signed copy of your book. And so I tried to make it transparent, and that way everyone knows. And I wrote everyone's name on here, so I'm just going to do that draw right now, and then I'll pass off to Leah. If your name is taken, then Yaakov Frichter will be in touch with you about getting a copy of that book. So we have Anna Vibrinska. So Anna, I think you're still on in here.
Woohoo!
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so Anna, if you can just in the chat or chat with Yaakov Frichter just to get some details about how we can get a book to you. That's great. Congratulations. All right, so I'm going to pass back to Leah and yay!
Congratulations, Anna. So I just wanted to say thank you to Abby for being with us tonight and being so generous with your time. It's been wonderful to talk with you. And to Genevieve for all of your work in organizing and coordinating, and to Yakov. And I also just want to remind everybody that we are starting a book club at Beth Tzedec, and I'm so excited. And it's social justice themed, which I love, because if you know me at all, you know that I love books and you know that I love social justice. And so this is so awesome. And our next book, we're going to be reading Desmond Cole's book, The Skin We're In. He's an anti-Black activist in Toronto, and the book is about his experience as a Black young man in Toronto. You can check out his book. You can check out his documentary called The Skin We're In. You can check out his piece in Toronto Life from a few years ago about being carded 50 times by Toronto police, but before he was 30. So we're going to be reading that and talking about anti-Black racism in Toronto and in the Jewish community. The link to the Google form to register is further up in the chat. So please sign up, hang out with us, talk about some books and some issues, and email me if you have any questions. And I think that's it. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank
you all. Thank you all for being here. Have a good night, everyone.